Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days of reading, and for those of you who are very familiar with the series and have stuck with it for a very long time, welcome back. First thing, I'm going to apologise that I sound weird because I don't know whether I've got a head cold or just really bad hay fever, but I've had the lovely husky voice going on for a week and it's driving me insane. So if I progressively get harder to understand, I do apologise. This week, a couple of different things happened. I actually did not watch anything on TV, so there's that. No TV update this week, but I did get invited to a painting party at a bar in Melbourne, which was weird and unexpected, but really, really fun. And for those of you who know me, I'm not a bar person at all. But this is a bar called Storyville, which is on Lonsdale Street for those of you who are in Melbourne, and it is a totally awesome place. It's very bookish themed. There's a Harry Potter crest hanging up on the wall. There's Alice in Wonderland, mushrooms and flowers and all sorts of things going on. And it's really, really cool. They have painting parties from about 6:30 for 2 hours, and the artist who leads the class name is Liam Waldy, and he was really, really lovely. And we did an awesome Willy Wonka style painting. So I will leave a picture on the screen of what my painting actually looked like because I've already taken it into work, which was not on my agenda. I was gonna have it here to show you, but it's already gone. It was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. And they gave me the tickets so that I could help promote it on Instagram. And I was very, very appreciative of that. It was a great event. Definitely planning on going back with some colleagues of mine. So that was something fun and different for me. I went out and was social on a Friday night, if you can believe it. It's, well, when I say social, I was there and I painted and it was awesome. And they had great cocktails. I had a polyjuice potion. I'll put a picture of that on the screen as well. It was also basically the dying end of the newts for me because I sort of gave up at this point. And I think I read something like 25 books for the newts. So I think I'm well and truly entitled to give up. I just wanted to read other things. And finally, on the 31st of August, there was a 24-hour round of the Smartathon and I read 2 things for that, which was just not what I anticipated doing, but it was fun, so I did it. This is my reading week from the 25th to the 35th of August. Because this is the last week in August, I will have my stats at the end, so stay tuned for those. I read 12 books this week, but before anyone freaks out, a lot of them were very, very short. A total of 2,553 pages, and my yearly reading total is up to 252 books. The first book that I read this week was Banishing the Dark, which is book 4 in the Arcadia Bell series by Jen Bennett, so I've now finished this particular series. This was published in 2014 by Pocket Books, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which was basically the average for the whole series. I think I gave it all of it 4. It was really good fun. It's an urban fantasy series. In this world, there are demons who have been born into the bodies of humans and they're called earthbound demons. Arcadia herself is a human, but she is also something else. She was conceived during a magical rite and her parents are an interesting pair. I'll say that because anything else would be spoilers. So she's something other and she has the ability to see earthbound demons. She also has the ability to bind them and banish them if need be. Being the 4th book in the series and the concluding book in the series, it's really hard to talk about it except to say that this one, obviously, we finally have our big final showdown with the big bad and Arcadia has to deal with a whole lot of things about who she is and where she comes from. There is a memory loss subplot in here, which was annoying at first, but then it sort of became a little bit endearing later on. And I sort of get it, but you know, memory loss plots are not always my favourite. So there was one, take that as you will. Then I read Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This is a 2019 release from Margaret K. McElderry Books, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. This is the Fairy Loot edition with the shimmery sprayed edges, or it starts set in a library, and our main character, Elizabeth, is desperate to become a warden, and wardens guard grimoires. Grimoires are the books of the sorcerers and are imbued with so much magic that they're basically sentient beings. And Elizabeth lives in a library. She's grown up in a library surrounded by all these books. And then one day she is framed for a crime and she is taken away to be judged and then finds herself plunged into a world where not everything is the way that she expected it to be because she's been raised to believe in the world as being one thing and she quickly discovers that it's not. She becomes tied to a sorcerer named Nathaniel, who is awesome and damaged and broken by things in his past. And you also have Silas, who is connected to Nathaniel, and Silas was probably my favourite character in the whole book, and I can't tell you why because that would be spoilers, but there is fantastic banter. There is Lots of really great magic and books, and it was just a delightfully fun read. Then I read Deadly Ride by Jodie Holford. This is book 3 in the Britton Bay Cozy Mystery series. It is a 2019 release from Lyrical Underground, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Being third book in the series, it's also really hard to sort of talk about this one without giving away too many spoilers, but the main character, Molly Owens, is the editor of a small newspaper in Britton Bay. In this book, her boyfriend has helped to bring a vintage car show to the town as sort of the last hurrah of the summer season. One of the co-founders of this car show is found murdered, and Molly and Sam find themselves investigating what has happened. Good fun read. I love these books. I tend to be quite picky with my cozy mysteries, but I stumbled across the Britton Bay series last year on NetGalley. This was a NetGalley review copy as well, and I was very much taken by it, and so I've continued to keep an eye out and to read the next book in the series when they've been released. So I do really enjoy this series. Then I read a biography / memoir, and it's called Jet Girl: My Life in War, Peace and the Cockpit of the Navy's Most Lethal Aircraft, and it is by Carolyn Johnson with Hoff Heffernan. It is a 2019 release from St. Martin's Press, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I don't often read biographies / memoirs, but this one intrigued me because for the longest time I have always had a fascination with military planes, and I don't know what it is. It started in primary school and I saw it and I thought, oh, it's from the perspective of a female pilot in the US Navy, and that would be really interesting and potentially shocking and depressing, and it was all of those things. It was very easy to read. This is not a short book, but it was very easy to read and to get into, and I really enjoyed reading Caroline's story. So she always wanted to go into the military. She made her way through the academy and was flying FA-18 Super Hornets on a US carrier. And that blows my mind because she's so far different from what I am as a person. And she goes through the highs and the lows of being a female pilot in the US Navy. The only thing I can say about this book is that it sort of left off right at the tail end, and to me there was not a clear resolution, but that's also said that it goes up to, it's actually written up to, I think, about 2017. So with the way that books are written, you can't continue her story. Whatever happened after the end of that point was happening while the book was being proofread and edited and all those sorts of things. So go into that knowing that there's sort of more of a question at the end of the book about the state of the US military and how women are treated, rather than a conclusion or a summary or something like that. It's more about, okay, well, what's going to happen next? Aside from that, I really enjoyed it. It was a really interesting read. Then I read a kids graphic novel called Elmo, a Bear's Life. This was also a NetGalley review copy. Oh, and Jet Girl was a review copy as well. Elmo was written by Ingrid Chabert, I think, and illustrated by Maze Lee. And it is the story of a young girl who has been raised by a bear, and she calls him Papa Bear, and then one day Papa Bear decides they have to go on this journey, and he's taking her somewhere because it's time. We don't know why he's taking her there. You can sort of make assumptions as an adult, but she doesn't know why she's going, and she's this very, very wild little thing who walks around half naked and all sorts of things the whole way through the book because she doesn't know any better. She's literally grown up in the wild as an animal. It leaves off on a cliffhanger, so beware of that going into it, but it has the most beautiful artwork. It is just stunning, and if you have a look at the cover, that's the whole reason why I requested it in the first place. I just had to see what it was about. It is a 2019 release from Europe Comics, and I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Off Limits by Claire Connolly, which is an adult romance book. It was published in 2018 by Mills and Boon Dare, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I've actually read this for an event that I'm going to for the Melbourne Writers Festival next weekend, because I'm going to see a couple of the romance writers panels, and I wanted to read a couple of the books by the different authors. So there'll be a few of them popping up in the next 2 weeks that I've read particularly for these panels, including the next book that I'm going to talk about. Off Limits is an office romance between Jack Grant, who is a billionaire who has suffered through the loss of his wife, and his assistant / lawyer, Gemma Picton, who is very attracted to him and watches him go through women as a coping mechanism, but doesn't want to get involved because she knows exactly where it leads to. And then they have this moment in the office late one night. Then it's really a turning point for them, and they have to work out, can they actually make this a viable relationship, and can they bend for each other and go from there. It was perfectly fine. Jack was a bit of an asshole at times, but that's a given when you have your alpha male characters in these sort of books. So it was an interesting read. I'm glad I've read it, and I've ticked off one author from the Melbourne Writers Festival. Then I read Beckoning Blood by Daniel DeLorme. Again, I read this for the Melbourne Writers Festival. This is a 2014 release from Escape Publishing, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This is sort of a paranormal romance, male romance, and it is about vampires, and it is the story of twins, Thierry and Olivier, and it is very much the Vampire Diaries / the originals-esque in terms of the relationship between the brothers and the vampire content, but very, very adult and very, very gory and very bloody. And it follows these two brothers throughout 3 different time periods from when they were first turned to vampires until the modern day. And there's a whole lot of things around characters being reborn into new bodies over the course of time and how these characters recognize them each time they find them. There are some suggestions of incest, so beware of that. There's also some dubious consent, and there is also some very graphic sort of scenes, so you have to go into it sort of with that mentality. It was an interesting read, and I might continue with the series, I haven't decided yet, but it did remind me very much of the Vampire Diaries in the originals, which I actually quite like, so there's that. Then I read Alien Warrior by Sadie Carter. This is book 1 in the Zirconian Warriors series. This is sort of like a science fiction romance novella. It was published in 2015. I think it was self-published because it was on Amazon and I couldn't find a specific publisher, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It follows Zoe, who is a human who is living on an outpost on an alien planet, and Dex, who comes along and kidnaps her because he recognizes her as her mate, and it's basically a mating story gone wrong. And I don't talk about it often on the channel, but it's funny, there's a whole lot of romance booktube channels that I follow that have really interesting recommendations, and I think I found this on one of them. And the sci-fi romance books I find highly entertaining, usually because they're just so out there. Sometimes you just want, you know, fairy floss for your brain, and that's what these books are. So I do really enjoy sort of picking them up and just working my way through various authors. Plus, if I really do like them, there are so many books in most of these series that it would keep me reading for ages. So there you go. Something you've learnt about me. And then for Smartathon on the 31st, I read 2 books. One was a novella and one was a shortish novel. The first one I read was Rock Courtship by Nalini Singh. This is book 1.5 in the Rock Kiss series, which follows a group of musicians. It was a 2014 release from TKA Distribution, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This actually takes place parallel to the first book, which I think was Rock Addiction, and it follows the drummer of the band Schoolboy Choir, David, who is known as the Gentleman of Rock and is quite well respected within the musical scene, and Thea, who is the publicist of the band, and the 2 of them have been good friends, and David has this unrequited crush on her, but she's had a really bad relationship that went very, very sour, and so she's quite reluctant to get involved with anyone, let alone a musician or someone that she's representing. And so in the first book, Rock Addiction, the main character of that story suggests that he write her a memo because Thea is physically incapable of not responding to a memo. And it's sort of the pros and cons of their relationship, and it goes from there. And it's delightfully entertaining and funny, and focuses on them having to deal with their hang-ups and all that sort of thing. So I really enjoyed it. I actually like the series. It's quite a good one. I never thought I would like a band romance book series. So there you go. And then I read Desperate Measures by Katie Robert, which is book 1 in the Wicked Villains series. It is a 2019 release from Trinkets and Tales, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is an Aladdin retelling that is a Jasmine and Jafar romance, and it is very, very dark romance, so go into it keeping that in mind. There is potential dubious consent, but it is also very much about a power struggle between these 2 characters. It's also sort of set, it's kind of hard to get a reading on when it's set. It's sort of more set modern day, but not necessarily contemporary society. But you can tell that it is a world that is built around business, and Jafar takes over Jasmine's father's business assets, basically double crosses him, and takes control of everything from his property, his businesses, and Jasmine, and then the whole thing sort of goes from there. Jasmine is very fiery and very true to herself, and yet she has this attraction to him, and the whole thing is very dark, very sexy. Being a dark romance, there are a whole lot of tropes that go on in here that you sort of accept as a progression of the genre. So in no way would you consider this a healthy, normal relationship, but in the story it works, and you get a whole lot of other characters popping up, which was really awesome, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing with the series. The extra 2 books that I read that I'm actually not going to talk about in this video, but I'll show you what they are anyway. There's Enid Blyton and the Secret Seven, The Secret of Old Mill, and Judy Moody Was in a Mood, Not a Good Mood, a Bad Mood by Megan McDonald. These are going to be featuring in a video sometime in the near future. I'll talk more about it in that particular video, but these were also read. And because this video is going to be hours long, let's get into the stats for the month. So this month I read 5 kids, I've got my notes here, I have to read it off here, otherwise I'm never going to remember. I read 5 kids books, 7 middle grade books, 3 YA, 1 new adult, and 23 adult books. I read 1 non-fiction, 3 sci-fi, 4 fantasy, 8 urban fantasy books, 3 paranormal romance books, 1 contemporary, 6 romances, 1 biography or memoir, 4 fiction books, 1 verse novel, 1 crime book, 2 adventure books, 3 graphic novels, and 1 cozy mystery. My genre reel is lovely. I still love that science fiction is the biggest fraction, although I suspect that urban fantasy, paranormal, and eventually the romance and contemporary is sort of going to give it a run for its money. I'm still mostly reading trade paperbacks, but I am increasing my ebook reads, which is really important to me because there's so many books on my e-reader. I'm mostly reading novels. That has not changed. The majority of the books are still that I'm reading are still published from 2018. However, there is a little bit of a smattering of things going back for the last 10 years or so. My publisher wheel is my happy colourful wheel of joy, as per usual, and in fact there would be more sections except for the fact that I have not yet added them and they probably wouldn't fit anyway. Every month I say I've got to fix my rating chart because it's not picking up my 5-star reads. There are 5-star reads. It's not that I've not given anything 5-star reads, but predominantly I give things 4 stars because I know what I like to read. This was my second best reading month for the year as in terms of books completed as well as pages completed by month. This is the second best year. I read just over 10,000 pages. I have really predominantly mostly read female authors. That's only just getting bigger every month, I'm pretty sure. Same thing with the protagonist. Female is definitely the biggest slice of this wheel. I am now officially over 50% adult reads for the year, which is good because I think that shows that reading tastes change over time, whereas in the previous years that would have 100% been YA being the biggest chunk. So that is everything that I have read in the last week and my stats for the month of August. In the comments, let me know if you have read any of the books that I've talked about today, or if you're reading something else. What are your thoughts on what you're currently reading? I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.